What is up, everyone? Welcome back to CageChat MMA. We are here, of course, to break down UFC 287 between Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya. Of course, these two have had a rivalry now that has gone through two sports, a number of years, and ended up with, of course, Pereira 3-0 up. But on Saturday night, the style bender, Israel Adesanya, got his revenge. He avenged those three losses in emphatic fashion with a knockout win against Alex Pereira in round two. And it was an absolutely incredible fight, an incredible contest. One that you thought was going in the way of Alex Pereira, very similar and eerie to compared to Alex Pereira's losses, because Adesanya had been winning the fights up until those stages. And then, obviously, it turns on its head, and Pereira gets his arm raised. This time, it was very similar the opposite way around. Now, whether that was Adesanya lowing and sort of, baiting, for want of a better word, Pereira to come in and get the knockout, I don't know, but it seemed like he played a blinder, especially in that second round. Now, the first round, I did give to Adesanya. It was very close. Two of them not really striking too much, obviously thinning each other out. They know each other's power so well by now. They know each other's tendencies so well by now. Obviously, this was Adesanya's final chance, his 8-minute moment. He said that going into the fight. So he was a bit tentative and a bit calculated. I didn't want to be overzealous and get caught. So it was a majority in the first round of a kicking contest with a few combos here and there. And then towards the end of the first round, Pereira looked like he was picking up the pace, looking like he'd not found his, found his range, but was starting to feel his groove and feel in the moment. Very similar, those calf kicks, adding up with Adesanya. And in the second round, it was more from the same from Pereira. You're thinking, this might be even shorter than the first fight, or the first fight in the UFC that they had back in November. And again, as an Adesanya fan, I was getting quite worried because you're seeing the calf kicks, you're seeing the strikes and the punches, and everything was going wrong. But Adesanya pulled it out of the fire in emphatic fashion, and he showed a little bit of his old self, didn't he? Because of course, there's been a lot of talk and questions that he's become a boring fighter, a boring champion. Now, in my opinion, the champion's allowed to be boring because his job at the end of the day is to keep that belt and to keep money coming in. His job isn't to be flashy. That's more the job of contenders, to lay claim to a title shot, to build up that following, to build up that steam. Once you're there at the top of the mountain, your job is to stay there by all means necessary. And we saw the Adesanya that was there against Derek Brunson. We saw the Adesanya that was there against Robert Whittaker in the first fight against Paulo Costa. Now, he's always been there. He's always had that killer instinct. Again, styles make fights, and this one happens to be able to match the style that Adesanya got the knockout. And of course, the closing sequence was, of course, Pereira backing up against the fence, very similar to the first fight, landing the strikes, going for the knee. But this time, Adesanya pulling out a weldy of the right hand, and then following up again with another right hand, and the left that dropped him, and then finished it with a hammer fist. Now, it's similar to what he tried to do in the first fight in the first round, but time ran out. And of course, he didn't have the gas in the fifth round to be able to retaliate like that, having just got himself up again off the canvas and being up against the fence. He's kind of, I don't want to say dazed, but he definitely felt the impact of that fight, and being so late into the fight and into the fifth round, he wasn't able to calculate himself as he could and would have done in the first or second round, and as he did on Saturday night. And it just shows you where Adesanya is. And he's a fantastic champion. Yes, he's lost his belt, but he's shown character to get it back. He's a one-of-a-kind sportsman, really, isn't he? Because, he's cleaned out his division. He's beat 1-5 convincingly on all counts now. So, there's a conversation to be had. Where is he at in his legacy? Where is his career? Where is his, I don't want to say GOAT status, but because I don't think he's in the top 3, top 4, probably even not in the top 5. But he's certainly probably I was going to say greatest middleweight of all time, but you've got to put respect to Anderson Silva. But he's there and thereabouts. He's second at least, isn't he? With the work he's done. And the fact that he's cleaned out his division is strong credence as to the nature of the beast. Now let's have a look, of course, at the results. Of course, we have got the score here. Pereira did actually land more strikes, 49 out of 85 for him, whereas Adesanya only landed a 41, but he landed a 2 or 3 that mattered and got the finish. Only 3 seconds of control, not too much. Obviously, these two being kickboxers, you're not expecting a wrestling bout, are you? But he did get it done in round 2 in emphatic fashion. Picked up the belt again. Now, he did have his antics, and I don't go against them with them. I thought the 3 arrows is one of the coldest moments in UFC history. It might just peak pound-for-pound headshot dead from Leon Edwards, giving Pereira a bit of a taste of his own medicine. Then obviously, found Pereira's son and giving him a taste of his own medicine. Now they can see it how you want, but I think Pereira keeps receipts and he settles scores. And I didn't see anything malice or ill towards, so it's not like he's going off at the sun too much. It's more just a tasteful reminder and giving him back what he got. But yeah, I didn't see anything ill-mannered in that, personally. But yeah, Adesanya, what's next for him? Of course, Dricus du Plessis is the next contender in line, who he hasn't faced. Robert Whittaker is next in line for the title, in my opinion, but those two have already thought twice. Now, you could have a look at Go Volkanovski and Holloway and say, they thought 3 times with it being 2-0 to Volkanovski, but of course, there's a bit of a more question because people thought Holloway had won either of the first 2 fights, if not both. Whereas this time, there's people saying that Whittaker won the second fight, but I think it's very conclusive and quite strongly in favour of Adesanya winning that fight. But I'd like to see number 3. Robert Whittaker's number 1, for sure. And I'd like to see Dricus du Plessis fight a Sean Strickland, Marvin Vettori, Jared Cannonier. Get a win over them, and then we're looking at a title shot for Dricus du Plessis. Because he is very close. He has put in some good work. He has a good win against Derek Brunson. He's got a good win over Darren Till also. But he has gassed out in previous fights. He has, had a rough second round. And he's managed to get out of it, but against Adesanya, if he has that kind of second round, Adesanya will get him out there no problem. So he probably needs a 5-rounder against the Cannonier, the Tory, Strickland, etc. Just so we can gauge where he's at over the distance. But yeah, Dricus du Plessis is a fresh matchup, of course. There's a lot of talking between those two, a rivalry building up, which is being quite fueled on social media. And with the political side of things, of course, it's not an easy conversation to be talking about. But there is something there, and UFC Africa would be it should have happened 3 years ago when we had Usman, Ngannou, and Adesanya all as champions at the same time. It should have happened then. But Adesanya certainly can be the spearhead to have our first UFC Africa card. And I wouldn't be against Dricus du Plessis being on there and fighting him. But do I think it's next? No. I think it's later down the line. But I'd like to see Whittaker. Of course, let's talk about Hamzat, but I think, again, he could fight either Torre or Paulo Costa. In fact, there's rumours that he might be fighting Paulo Costa in Abu Dhabi. But that would be a fight I need to see. I need to see Hamzat get another win, because at the moment his only wins there is Jared Mearshart. With all due respect to Mearshart, that is not a win that you're going to a title fight with, no matter how scary you are. For Pereira, he's of course announced his move to 205, which I like. It's almost a shame he's not champion, because I would like to see him against Jamal Hill. Jamal Hill, of course. Although that fight could still happen, because Hill would come out and welcomed him to the division. You've also got the likes of Jan Blachowicz, Magomed Ankalaev, Anthony Smith is in there. You've got Johnny Walker would be an interesting fight just on a stylistic point of view, but I think Pereira would be too much. Johnny Walker would be an interesting fight. Obviously got Paul Craig further down the rankings. I don't think that would be a fight. Well, Paul Craig unfortunately just doesn't have the striking. If he could get close enough to Pereira to bring him down, it'd be his fight all day long. But I don't think he would be able to get away from that left hand, unfortunately. But yeah, you've got the Jan Blachowicz, the Yuri Prohaska's coming back. So yeah, the move to 205 is a good one and a good move for him. Does it close the door on the Adesanya chapter? I don't know. I think there could be a 5th fight down the line, and the trilogy in the UFC probably does need to happen, so settle once and for all. Could it happen at 205? We're not sure. But yeah, I like his move to 205, and I'm interested to see what he does next. In my opinion, he's taken over the mantle from his now coach Gravity Teixeira, who obviously retired in January. So yeah, there's a lot there to be done and to be had, and it's a good move for him. And again, just nice to see Adesanya. One thing I will say is the the social media antics, the mentality of saying, "Oh, you're still 3-1 down, or you're still this, you're still that, you still got knocked out by Pereira." The way I like to see it is that someone wasn't afraid to give up on their goals and their dreams. They had the self belief to believe that they could win there. And again, I say there's a comparison of the gamer, a competitor inside Adesanya, and this felt like his final boss mission, and he kept trying, didn't come close, or kept getting further away seemingly. But this time he had the cheat code and the game plan, and had learned enough of Alex Pereira to get the job over the line. And this was his final boss mission, and he completed the game of this rivalry. And now he can go on to the next chapter. But I don't like the whole, "Oh, you're still 3-1 down," because again, the tennis balls going in there for a fourth time after being knocked out twice consecutively. Yes, one alcohol and one technical. It takes a lot of balls to get back in there. He could have said, "I'm taking a year out. I've been champion. I've been active. Let Robert Whittaker deal with it. Let Marvin Vettori deal with it, and I'll come back in a year's time and slide right in." Or hopefully Robert Whittaker has beaten him, and I can go beat him for a third time for the belt. But no, he brushed off the defeats, and he's going back in there. And he's got to win, so he deserves a lot of plaudits for that, and he showed that and echoed that in his post-fight speech, which was incredible. And again, he's just a fantastic champion and a fighter that I always enjoy watching, whether it's the 2 rounds or 5 rounds. As I do enjoy watching Gilbert Burns at the moment. Gilbert Burns is fantastic, isn't he? He was just too much for Jorge Masvidal. It's sad when you see fighters that reach that point where you go, "Oh, they've turned here," and that's at 38 years of age. Jorge Masvidal has unfortunately gone over the hill, and he did make the right decision to retire. Obviously, he threw one glove out the octagon. Did put him down, which Chelsea obviously brought up as a didn't he sort of moment to retire? Would he come back? I don't think so. He's got enough money. He's not going to fight for a title. So who is there? Obviously, there's Conor would be the most obvious shout. Maybe a Paddy Pimblett would be obvious with name value and brand value. But you're looking further down the line, Tony Ferguson, who I felt like again going to that. Seeing a fighter grow old in the octagon, and that one fight, obviously for Tony, was, maybe not Gaethje because he's still looking at his prime against Gaethje, but certainly Charles Oliveira and Beneil Dariush looking at them and going, these aren't the fighters I was watching 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And Masvidal fell under that category on Saturday night, and probably against Colby Covington as well. Let's be fair. Since 2019, he's not been on the best form. Whether that was inactivity because he settled and made his money, I don't know. Obviously, there was a pandemic in between there. I don't know the conversations that he had, because obviously he fought 3 times in 2019, but then he's only fought 3 times up until this fight with Burns. Now, of course, one was a knockout against Usman, so he took some time off. But we'd expect him to be more active. Well, actually, I'd say against Colby, following Colby, obviously there was the court cases and that trouble that he had to deal with. But we would have expected him to be more proactive after the Nate Diaz win. And not take 6-7 months layoff with going in on 6 days notice against Usman. I wonder if what his thoughts about that. Did he miss his peak because of the pandemic? But Burns certainly in his peak, and he looked fantastic. He had the fight over 3 rounds. Unfortunately, he didn't get the finish. That was the only thing that was missing from a performance of Gilbert Burns. But he showed and cemented why he's in the top 5 of this division. And again, we'll have a look at the of course, results. 72 strikes landing from Gilbert Burns, 42 significant strikes, 77 landing from Jorge. So he did land a little bit more, but less significant. And of course, the 4 out of 6 takedowns and the control time was what put the fight in Gilbert Burns' favour and got his hand raised. And rightly so, 30-27s across the board. But yeah, really good performance from Gilbert Burns. Next, I'd like to see him fight Colby Covington. I know it's likely that Covington's going to be fighting Edwards for the title, but I think those two should go at it again because neither of them have done well. Burns is on the win streak. He deserved the title shot based on his most recent performances. Whereas Colby, if he beat Gilbert Burns, you say, okay, he's beaten Gilbert Burns, he's been on a good run. Put him back in there, he's on a 2-fight win streak. Whereas Colby going straight in off the back of the win against Jorge Masvidal feels a bit rough. On the rest of the division, especially Bilal Muhammad and Shavkat Rakhmonov and Gilbert Burns now. So yeah, Gilbert Burns versus a Bilal or Colby would be the fight I'd like to make. He's probably going to get Shavkat next because he doesn't turn down fights, and we know how good Shavkat Rakhmonov is, and that is a fight I'd like to see. Obviously, he almost tamed the beast of Khamzat Chimaev. Can he tame another beast in Shavkat? Obviously, he's fought Usman already. I don't see that fight replaying. Usman probably will get a Bilal or a Shavkat also. He'll probably get the one that obviously Burns doesn't get. But again, fantastic performance from Gilbert Burns, and he showed why he's top 5. And Masvidal, again, I see him fighting Jake Paul within 12 to 18 months. We've just seen Nate Diaz accept it. I think Jorge will accept it within 12 to 18 months, especially with Game Bred boxing. I can see a Game Bred / MVP promotion happening within the next 12 to 18 months, and he can go and do boxing. Although at 38 years of age, he wasn't slipping punches great, and he has lost some steps. So maybe he just goes into a coaching role, and we just see him, he'd be in the Hall of Fame. He deserves a Hall of Fame career, especially what he did in 2019, fastest ever knockout, some of the greatest highlight reels, and the longevity as well, 52 pro fights. But yeah, props off to Jorge Masvidal. Been a favorite, a favorite of everyone's for a long time now. But yes, moving on to Rob Font and Adrian Yanez. Rob Font and Yanez just went it hammer and tongue, really. Back and forth war for all of nearly 3 minutes, really. Both of them didn't back down, but Rob Font was the more clinical striker, got his punches in there a little bit quicker, a little bit more powerful, and obviously dropped Yanez and got him out of there with the TKO. Obviously, Yanez fuming because he let his game plan go out the window, and it's almost an ego battle between the two, and Rob Font is too good to have an ego battle with, unfortunately. But it will be a learning curve from Yanez. He'll come back stronger, come back better. And it showed Rob Font why he has only lost to Chito Vera and Jose Aldo. He's only lost at the top of the tree. And for me, next is Petr Yan. Go fight Petr Yan, Rob Font, and if you get past Petr Yan, you see it happens to Sandhagen. It puts you next in line for a title. With Merab as also, it's got a winner that Petr Yan should be next in line for the title, but obviously he's got to wait and see what happens between Aljamain and Cejudo. Or actually, maybe go fight Sean O'Malley. Fight one of those two. Obviously, he's got lost against Vera. That would want a fresh matchup, but yeah, Petr Yan or Sean O'Malley would be next, and would be perfect for Rob Font. For Yanez, he'll probably be looking at Pedro Munoz, perhaps someone behind him, or around the ranks. So Ricky Simone is fighting in a couple of weeks, isn't he? Against Song Yadong, I believe. Maybe he'll get the winner of one of those two. But yeah, fantastic fight for all that it lasted, as was Kevin Holland versus Santiago Ponzinibbio. And Ponzinibbio is someone who's almost in the Jorge Masvidal category of looking a little bit worn now. Of course, he's had some horrendous times outside the cage with injuries and health issues, which, again, similar to Masvidal, has probably taken his peak away from him, which must suck as an athlete, as a fighter, when it's not on your grounds that your peak is taken away from you. Either pandemic or health or injuries has caused you not to being able to compete. But Kevin Holland was fantastic all fight. It was very well. I'd say he was 2 rounds up going into the third, but it wasn't the most. It wasn't a 10-8 round or at all. It was just very solid 10-9 rounds from Kevin Holland. But then he got to finish in emphatic fashion in the third round, getting that left hook in there as he did. And it's a shame Masvidal retired because I would like to see that fight. But he showed Kevin Holland why he's just outside the top 15. Who's next? Maybe Ian Gary or Daniel Rodriguez, perhaps. That would be a fight I'd be willing to see. Obviously, Holland was supposed to fight Rodriguez, if I'm not mistaken, on that card that got switched around with Khamzat, Nate, and Tony, and obviously Jing Liang Li. Holland was supposed to fight Daniel Rodriguez. So if Ian Gary or Rodriguez wins that fight, that would be next in line for me, in my opinion, for Kevin Holland. Ponzinibbio, he was supposed to fight Robbie Lawler, maybe go back in and try that again, because both of them at the tail end of their careers, unfortunately. Unlike Christian Rodriguez, who put the end, or gave Rail Roses a real teaching moment. Of course, Rail Roses, 18 years of age, fell his first professional defeat, going down to 7-1, but Christian Rodriguez was fantastic. He weathered the storm of Rail Roses to put everything into that first round, getting the takedown, trying for submissions, and just exerting himself way too much. Showed a lack of experience and maybe not a lack of respect, but maybe putting too many eggs in one basket, so to speak, because he thought he was going to get him out in the first round, but Rodriguez weathered the storm, as we said, and then just coasted the fight in round 2 and round 3 and comfortably got a decision win. What's next for him? I don't know. It's a big win because obviously Raul Rosas was coming in with a bit of a hype train behind him, and he's still got that. I like what Sean O'Malley said to say, take 2 years out, go get better, you'll come back at 20 years of age, and you'll still be well young. And, you know, if you're as good as, you know, he's, top 25 bantamweights in the world at the moment. You know, if he goes away for 2 years, he's only going to get better and get stronger. And, you know, we don't want to rush him too fast. You don't want to see him in Edmund Shabazian who's going on 3 losses, or Sage Northcutt gets cut because he's been thrown into the deep end too fast. But yeah, again, Raul Rosas will be thankful for that performance and that defeat, because again, he can go back and watch the tape and take some real lessons from it. And Christian Rodriguez gets a very solid win on his record, as does Kelvin Gastelum. Now, Kelvin Gastelum and Chris Curtis is a fight that was very, very close. It was back and forth throughout the 15 minutes. Now, I could see a little bit why Chris Curtis is annoyed, especially that second round and the headbutt, but I do think Kelvin Gastelum did enough to get the win. I had it 1 each going into the third. Although you could probably give Kelvin the second and give Chris the third round. But again, I agree with 29-28. Round 1 was Gastelum. You could probably put more emphasis into round 3 being a Chris Curtis round. So that's how you see the round 2 with the headbutt and without the headbutt. It's a shame to Chris Curtis. He hasn't reacted well with it on social media, but when you lose, I don't know what his contract is, but he's going to lose 20-30 grand because of that decision. And it wasn't a robbery, but again, when you're an athlete and he is human at the end of the day. He's got a loss on his record, and he's got, half his paycheck. So I can see why he's frustrated. But I do think Kelvin Gastelum did just enough to get the victory. Luana Pinheiro beat Michelle Watson Gomez by a split decision. Good win for her. Of course, Joe Pyfer knocked out Gerald Meerschaert in round 1. Lupita Godinez, a split decision win against Cynthia Calvillo. And Cynthia Calvillo, I believe, has been released from the UFC since. Ignacio Bahamondes defeated Trey Ogden by unanimous decision. Steve Garcia got a great finish against Xiaolian Nudembiak in round 2, uppercut to the body. Devastating when you get a body strike, isn't it? And then Sam Hughes got the upset of the night, probably against Jacqueline Amorim. She beat her by unanimous decision, opening up the card and putting Miami on fire, really, with that performance. But yes, Israel Adesanya, is back on top, avenging the losses against Alex Pereira. Will there be a trilogy? Let us know down in the comments down below. Make sure you do hit that subscribe button. Make sure to follow us at CageChat MMA across all social platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. We're on everything at the moment. And I'll see you guys on the preview for Max Holloway versus Arnold Allen.